Hi, I'm Maya McCarmo, and I'm a 14-year survivor of breast cancer. When I went through treatment, there was not any support for my mental health, my emotional health, and I experienced much of what we'll be talking about today, which is going to be about anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and people don't discuss this very often. It's a really important topic. Some become suicidal, some become hospitalized, but these are the things that we don't talk about all the time, but they're important to be discussed. And so we have with us today brave survivors who will be sharing their journey. So today I have Patricia Fox, who is an early stage breast cancer survivor. Tamikia Powell, who's a breast cancer patient and warrior, is so amazing. I love her dearly. Love all of you dearly. Esther Boykin, who is a mental health therapist. Tawana, who's a nurse practitioner. And Bruce Van Horn, a dear friend and a personal and business life coach. Thanks for being here today, guys. Thanks so much. Patricia, I want to start with you because you've been very open about your breast cancer journey and your mental health, about, feeling suicidal before breast cancer and the stigma of that, and then having to journey through breast cancer. I find your story amazing, how you've gone from a space of the stigma around mental health to now being an advocate and talking about it. Tell us your story and how you got from there to here.
So initially, when I found in love with my breast, I thought I was being like a hypochondriac somewhat because that's what I've been told all my life. But I just something said, go and get it checked out for sure. And when I got the biopsy done, this was Black Friday of 2013. And then December 5th, they were like, you're going to be a breast cancer survivor, which I appreciate them saying it in that way. However, the way that I received the news, I laughed hysterically. It was like nervousness and confusion at the same time. And I don't think that I allowed myself to process it. I was in denial, basically. And throughout time, like after I had to have certain things done, like harvesting my eggs. And then I want to say like after surgery, leading into chemotherapy is when I was like, okay, I think I need to seek like counseling. I need someone to talk to because I was just like so emotional and I was so upset and I felt very alone and I just couldn't navigate those feelings by myself. So that's when I saw a therapist.
Wow, thank you. So Tamikia, you've been through a lot yourself personally and throughout your breast cancer journey. Can you share a bit about your journey?
First, I would like to say thank you for having me here. When I first was diagnosed with cancer, I was very scared and I was sad. I was 14 years old. So at 14, I did not know anything about cancer. The only thing I knew was that people died from it, and I knew I did not want to die. I was living in the projects during that time, and I did know that people with cancer lost their hair. So I was very nervous about me losing my hair. I did not want to lose my hair at all. I was so worried about being talked about. I was going to be embarrassed, by my friends and people who live in the community, and I did not want that to happen. I was angry. I was very moody. I just couldn't understand why me. What did I do? I felt like I was being punished by God, and I didn't really know how to control my emotions. So I was being mean to people who was trying to be there for me, like my close friends, my family. I ended up having suicidal thoughts because at one point I was just in pain all the time. I was in pain every day, 24/7, and I just felt like if I wasn't living anymore, then it would be better because I'll be pain free.
How do you go from where you were before to being able to be in a space of where you can breathe and live your life despite your diagnosis or because of it?
I spent many days laying in the bed, just laying around, just not wanting to fight anymore. And I basically had to give myself a reality check. Like I had to basically get out of denial because at first I kept saying that I wasn't depressed, I wasn't stressed, like I was in denial that I was any of those things. So once I started accepting it for what it was, it made me change my whole mental state because I started asking myself, do I want to live or do I want to die? And my answer is I want to live because I still have a whole life ahead of me. I'm only 28 years old. I still have dreams that I want to accomplish. I have goals that I want to accomplish. So slowly I started gaining faith. And faith itself is what got me through my whole process and made me want to speak out and have a positive mindset. I started turning every negative news into something positive because there's always something positive out of the negative, whether we don't think that or not. It's always something positive. Once I started thinking positive and started gaining that faith, I was unstoppable. It was nothing that anybody could tell me because I started believing that I could get better and that I would change.
That's beautiful. So Bruce is with us today. Bruce also has survived cancer. To Tamika's point, she had to really go from that place of like overwhelmed to finding ways to dig into her faith. And that's what you did as well. Can you share a bit about that?
A million things are racing through your head, right? Including things like, am I going to live? But who's going to take care of my boys? I'm a single dad with sole custody of two teenage boys. And oh my goodness, how, if something happens to me, then my boys will have this really difficult life. And for me, I knew that the absolute number one priority had to be me and me surviving. And I didn't have any energy to waste on anything other than healing. So I really had to make peace with right now, I'm not a dad. Right now, my boys are not my responsibility. They are in great hands. I have amazing family who's taking care of them. And right now, what I need to do is just breathe, to be able to take this one breath, because this is all that really, really matters. And that if I'm able to do that, then I have everything I need. So everything outside of my ability to breathe is bonus. And I thought, well, what do we do with bonus? What do we do with these extras? Well, we give thanks for them. And so I would take a breath in and I'd take a breath out, be aware of, at that point, the real abundance of what I really have, and to sit in this deep gratitude for that. And so to move through the cancer journey, to move through the healing journey with this energy of gratitude versus an energy of fear or anger or questioning, why did this happen to me? The gratitude is an incredibly healing energy. And my doctor was actually really blown away after a couple of weeks at how quickly I was able to heal and to move on from the surgeries. And here I am, coming up on 7 years later.
It's very powerful. And I think I really connect with that because when I got my diagnosis, I was in a relationship, and in a matter of less than a month, their relationship ended because he did not have the stomach for going through cancer with me. And I had to really work on my restoring myself, like restoring my messaging in my head that I was abandoned, that nobody would love me, that I would die. When I really shifted my perspective, I thought what cancer has given me is a perspective that I could do whatever I want in a way that's so powerful now. Cancer made me think about the fact that life was finite and I had to live my life today. So Patricia, I know that culturally there's stigma in the African American community about depression and anxiety and suicide, and or even the ideation of it. How did your family react when they learned you had breast cancer? And how did they help you or not with your mental health?
So I actually navigated a lot of it alone. At that time, I was in breakdown with my nuclear family, we'll say, so with my parents and with some of my siblings, not all of them. So I'm the kind of person where I'm just like, I'll deal with it myself. However, because I needed medical history, that's the only reason I really told my parents. And even when I told them, like, they weren't really present. My sister was devastated. She cried almost immediately. And my brother, however, he was like a pillar of strength, and he didn't really have a breakdown or like just share with me how he really felt until after I was finished with treatment, finished with surgery, like finished. And he was like, okay, now I feel like I could breathe and I could tell you, but he felt like he needed to be strong for me. However, when it came to mental health, I actually I went through that journey, like definitely by myself, because like you said, in African-American community, which I say ABC, African, Black, or Caribbean, there's definitely a stigma of like, why do you want to talk to someone? Are you crazy? Or you're dramatic. Like I was always called a drama queen. And I felt like, no, like I really need to discuss some things. And I understand that generationally, there's a pattern of keeping secrets or, not necessarily listening to what is happening with your children or with, your sister or whomever. So I just felt like that was something I needed to do by myself. And because I know the stigma and I didn't feel like I would get support, but I'm glad that I did. I went for 2 years. And it was life-changing. And I'm still using some of those tools that I learned then today.
You know, we're always taught to be strong Black women, and I've come to not like that word anymore, because you can tell somebody you're in your deepest, darkest pain place, and they want to just see you smile and say, "I'm good." And I'd be bald, laying in the bed, and they just wanted to see me smile. And I know they love me, right? But they didn't want to see that I was like scared and in pain. And then the kind of person I am, I'm wired to, if I'm in a bad place, I want to make it better for somebody else. So I began my organization, which I love, and it built, serving other people gave me this gift that I would never have gotten otherwise. But what I didn't do was deal with my own trauma around having breast cancer and facing my mortality. So all the anxiety and the depression and the fears that I had been not dealing with, it began doing what's called flooding. And I will have Esther talk to that soon. When you start flooding, like, it literally opens the doors for all kinds of other stuff, like, you know, repressed memories and all that. And I'm like, what in the world's going on with me? Am I going crazy or something? I was forced to deal with myself. I want to go into Tamika's story a bit more. Were there any other personal traumas that you experienced before your diagnosis or after that have impacted your life, and how are you dealing with them?
After my diagnosis, I was in a relationship, and that relationship failed because my ex, he couldn't take me being sick. And he also was like placing blame on me for being sick. And during that time, I was actually letting it get to me and started to think, like, is it my fault that I have cancer? Is it my fault that I'm going through all of this? When I needed him the most, he wasn't there. Like, he just wanted me to be how I was, you know, before the sickness. And it was just, it couldn't happen. Like, I was going through something very serious that he did not understand. Also, after being diagnosed, I had dealt with a sexual assault. You know, that caused a lot of mental issues that I was having to deal with as well. So on top of me losing my ex, well, breaking up with my ex boyfriend, dealing with cancer, and then a sexual assault, it was so much so much in my mind. And at that point, I really did not want to live anymore. A lot of people, instead of them really wanting to support me, they were trying to be nosy, like more nosy than actually being there for me. My mom, she didn't really know how to deal with me having breast cancer. I'm her only daughter, the first child to be sick. So she never talked about it. No, nobody ever asked me how was I really feeling. Like, if you know a person, you should know. If you ask me, am I okay? And I say yes, you should know if I'm lying or not. Like, you should know that, I'm not really okay. It was just hard to talk to somebody because they didn't understand. They just wanted me to be the regular Tamika. And I could not be the regular Tamika because I had a lot of things that I was going through.
Tamika, thank you for sharing that. I really admire your strength. I admire you so much. I remember you and I talking on my deck that afternoon, and you've been through a lot, and I hold you in my heart all the time. That's why I reach out and call and text. But it takes a lot to process. So I thank you for sharing that with people who are watching. And to see your face today and hear you talking about it is something that is beyond my comprehension in terms of your courage to share, to help others who are navigating, cancer for one, or having gone through sexual assault. So thank you for being so courageous. I truly admire that. Tawana. Tamika's been through so much as a breast cancer patient. Oftentimes, we don't dig deep into patients' history to ask what happened. And sometimes, let's say she had gotten assaulted before the diagnosis, she may not have even wanted to be seen or be touched. And now she's living with all of this. How do you, as a nurse practitioner, help patients and delve into their lives to learn more about what they're dealing with as a person before breast cancer, and then as a patient getting through that breast cancer journey with other multiple traumas they may have experienced throughout their life?
You guys are really pulling on my heartstrings right now. I'm kind of emotional. Tamika, you are a true testimony and inspiration, I think, to all of us. And Tamika, you mentioned the word nosy, and I often call myself nosy when I'm talking to my patients. And it's not that I'm being nosy and trying to use the information maliciously, but it really helps me to really get to understand my patients, who they are as a person. And during those visits, to me, survivorship starts on that very first visit with that diagnosis. And you guys have all said so many very important, impactful things to me as I'm listening, that's gotten me to thinking as I'm sitting here. And the survivorship part starts with diagnosis. That's a major trauma, as you mentioned, Naima. And when you don't deal with those things up front, like you said, you have this flooding where it happens. And so for me, when I'm talking to patients, I really get to know them. I ask them a little bit about themselves, their family history. What is your support system like? I think it's really important sometimes when you say, how are you doing? Like Tamika, when you said, when people ask you, how are you doing? And you say, fine. Like they want you to say fine and say yes, because that's what they're used to. And that's the thing about people who are strong. And I think Patricia may have said this, being the strong Black woman. Um, I think it's really important for us to say to someone when you're seeing them. So when I have a patient in the room with me and I'm talking to them, I'll say, instead of saying, how are you doing? How have you been handling this diagnosis? Who have you been talking to about your experiences? What are your side effects alike? I try to ask more open-ended questions instead of a yes or no, because that really helps you to be able to have that conversation and that dialogue with the patient to find out exactly what they're dealing with, what kind of trauma they may have been experiencing, and not just the mental aspect of just the cancer diagnosis itself, but how does it impact your work life? Are you able to work? Being able to get FMLA, disability, and then in just this pandemic, I think we've all seen what that can do. And that itself has also brought out depression and anxiety for many patients. And not just patients in the metastatic setting, because they're always dealing with stuff every day, those negative thoughts. But even patients in the early stage, they're now having to deal with anxiety and that fear of recurrence. So every time we see a patient, we're having to screen our patients to find out how much distress they're having, and then getting them off to a social worker. So within our institution, we actually have a licensed therapist to help them with each visit. So anytime we see them, if their distress screening is high, then we have to refer them out.
Thank you for that. You do great work. So Esther, going through cancer, as you've heard, causes multiple stressors in a way that's psychologically, negative towards patients. What are signs that people can look for who are caregivers and providers to support their patients as they navigate the breast cancer journey?
I think it can be challenging when we're dealing with something like breast cancer, because there's a normal level of stress and anxiety that should be there. I think one of the core things to look for is just when that anxiety or that sense of hopelessness gets to a place where people feel like they can't show up for their lives. So whether that's like not being able to get out of bed, not being able to do the main thing, I really love that we're seeing more and more doctors and medical facilities who are doing regular screenings, who are asking those questions to help people move beyond just sort of answering fine or hanging in there, which becomes sort of this standard check-in, but asking more specific questions. How's your sleep? How's your eating? Are you having a lot of thoughts that you can't get out of your head? And so that we're kind of pushing to have more detailed and more specific conversations. How are you coping? I think is a really great question to ask, because it moves us past just sort of saying I'm fine to talking about really specific things. Like if coping is, I don't know, I eat my ice cream, I go to my doctor's appointments, and then I just check out of life, those are concerning signs. Those are signs that we need more support and more intervention from a mental health perspective.
When you're happy, people say you're up. When you're not happy, they say you're down or you're blue. So the way we talk about those words, those things have to change. You mentioned therapy and the benefits of it, but I know that people can't often afford, therapy, because the average therapist is between, on the lower end, $75, lower end. On a higher end, a good therapist is about $250. And if you're in a state of massive trauma where you have to see someone once a week, let's say you're seeing a therapist that you're paying $175 a week to. That's a lot of money to pay for a week, plus your treatment bills. So how do you suggest people get, the right kind of therapist that's at the right cost for you?
It absolutely is a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody. So first of all, I would say, you're starting with your other medical providers, asking them for referrals. If you've got insurance or, whatever's already covering your treatment, the odds are that they have a list of resources and therapists and psychologists, even support groups that are covered by insurance, thus making them affordable. There are also a number of, Tiger Lily being included in that, a number of organizations who are providing free and low cost mental health services. Some are very specific to cancer patients, and some are just sort of more broadly targeting people who are struggling to find therapy. So I know that it's hard, even as I'm saying this, I know when you're in the middle of that journey, having one more thing to look for can feel really daunting. And so I do think it's important to ask for help. When friends and family are like, how can we support you? That might be one of the things they could do. Can you help me locate organizations to help pay for my therapy or help me find a therapist who is doing pro bono work. There are a number of therapists who donate their time through other organizations where they are giving an hour or two worth of sessions every week, again, that are free and low cost. I'm also a really big advocate for therapy groups. It's a great way to work with a therapist. And I think support groups are great, but in particular, finding a group that is led by a therapist is a really low cost way of having kind of the best of both worlds, building community, having a support system, and also getting the professional advice of a mental health expert who can kind of guide you and help you and also let you know when you may need some other things, whether that's medication or other forms of mental health treatment along the way.
One thing that's in the breast cancer space that I find very hard to deal with is that people think about this whole pink breast cancer world. And it's all like, you're diagnosed now, you're going to be a survivor and a warrior, and you got to just fight through and you got to get through it. And Tamika said this, they want to see a smile, right? They want to see a smile. They want to see you fighting. And I feel like it's sometimes hard to ask for help because people don't often understand that you need help. For Tawana, you're seeing patients coming into your office, your center, wherever. I don't have anybody that I know who's gone through breast cancer that I know that has not had an anxious day, a depressive day, or that trauma of breast cancer. One of my friends, Jay Caldwell, has described it as the violence of cancer, and it's like a war. But then people don't discuss that you have this war going on inside of you that you can't really talk to. How do you really support patients in getting to the truth of where they are?
So again, when you're with your patient on those visits, you're really trying to have that open dialogue. Again, that patient has that facade where they want to seem like they're doing okay. So you look over at the family member who's kind of looking like, no, everything's not okay. And again, just really getting to know them. And again, most institutions now, we have it where you have to. It's an initiative where we've realized for many years the impact of distress, anxiety, depression, how it can actually negatively impact your outcome. And so there's been a push or a movement within our community to screen patients at initial visit. So for the very first time you're meeting the patient, you have to screen them. And that's also looking at pre-existing depression and anxiety, because that's going to also heighten things. That's going to put that patient at more of a risk of not doing well with their treatment. Recently, I'll share a story. We had a patient that came in who already had pre-existing anxiety. But I could just tell by the way that her hand was trembling. I mean, you would have thought maybe she had Parkinson's or something, but it was with that I recognized and realized like, hey, there's something going on. And just talking to her about her pre-existing issues and just realizing the family impact, the lack of support, not wanting to talk to her children about it, we were able to get her to our therapist that day. So within our institution and within many institutions, they now have social workers on hand to speak with patients. Talking to your friend, your colleague, a coworker, church family member, just finding out what recommendations they might have, and just knowing who you are and what your goals are with therapy. Because not only is the therapist going to interview you, you have to interview them as well to find out what that fit's going to be. And the whole bottom line of therapy is being able to have that human connection. That's the heart of therapy, being able to feel comfortable. So I always tell patients, again, within our community, that stigma of feeling comfortable in sharing your business and airing your dirty laundry, when you have to break down that wall of what happens in our house stays in our house, you have to be able to let people know just it's okay to be vulnerable. We're not all perfect, and just being able to make that connection. That's the important part of it, having that human connection in the heart of therapy, so they'll be more transparent and feel more comfortable and confident about talking to someone.
It's kind of like finding your new tribe, right? Because even in the breast cancer space, it's like some people don't want to discuss therapy at all. They're all like badasses, and others are like, I need help, And I'm both. I'm kind of like, I used to not want to do that. I was like, I'm good, I got it. Then I realized I don't got anything. I need support. So I can still be a badass and still get help, which I do. Whether or not you have cancer or not, life is a journey. And we have multiple things we're facing with our children, with our spouses, with our parents, things that happen to us that just, whether, it's again cancer or not, you do need that support. I love what you talked about, though, that we're seeing more hospital centers and providers and healthcare systems offer mental health support services. Bruce's work is really around having a heart-based approach to living through your life in any aspect. And I love seeing that in the cancer space, we're turning towards that more heart-centered approach. We're blending in science with soul, which is really critical to helping patients navigate life and then life with cancer. Bruce, can you talk a bit about how you help people to live from the heart and how you as a cancer survivor have done that in your own life?
I traveled the path that so many people do in their lives, where we may go to school, or when we're young, we have these ideas of who and what we're going to be. And then somebody somewhere along the line says, yeah, well, Bruce, it's okay to, to have that little fantasy or whatever, but it's time to go get a job. Right. And so I did. I went and I got a job, and I was successful at it. And I got trapped into the lie that the making of money, the pursuing of relationships, the pursuing of material things would be the thing that makes me happy. And I was able to make that shift to just showing up and paying attention to the things that make me happy. Right? It sounds really kind of selfish, but it's selfish with a big S. And that when you are putting yourself and your desires and your joys and your happiness, not at the expense of somebody else, obviously, but when you are doing things and thinking things that make you happy, then you are actually the greatest gift that you can be to the world. I used to think that I needed to be a great dad. I needed to be a great husband. I needed to be a great employee or a great employer, or I needed to be a really great neighbor. Well, what I discovered was that everybody else would determine how well I'm playing those roles. And if my kids are unhappy with me, I must not be a great dad. If my wife is unhappy with me, I must not be a great husband. And what I discovered was that the way I was living my life, I had no real self-esteem. I wasn't living from my heart. I was living for the approval of other people's hearts, right? And what happened was that I realized that I had to figure out what makes me happy. What is the fullest expression of Bruce? And when I did that, it just happens that Bruce is naturally a good dad, a good neighbor, a good boss, right? These aren't the goals that I'm seeking to achieve. It's fruit that shows up in my life. It's the expression of who and what I am. And so that's really what I mean by living from my heart, living from what's already inside me, seeking to express itself outward. One of my all-time favorite business people is Sir Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Records and Virgin Atlantic Airlines. He has one business philosophy. And he says, if you can't have fun doing it, it's not worth doing, because no amount of money that you make from the thing is going to make it fun. And it's going to show up in the way you do the work. If you're not actually enjoying the work, then the work is not going to be as full and rich and beautiful as it potentially could be if you actually loved the expression of the thing. And so when we come from a heart-based, where there's this desire, and it's different for everybody, that when you're doing the work, when you're saying the things, when you're thinking the things that make you happy, feel good because it's flowing out of you, then that's really what I mean by heart-centered or heart-based living.
So when I began Tiger Lily, I called it that for a reason. Women should see the name and think about a flower that was beautiful and strong and transforming throughout the flower's journey, like a woman through her journey going through cancer. She's still beautiful. The way we go into cancer is like you're told you have this scary bad thing, which is awful, right? It's scary. It's but also, how can you live your life in a way that's so enthusiastic during your journey, because you don't know when it's going to end. I had triple negative breast cancer, for which we didn't have targeted treatment for until this year. So I could have spent the past 14 years depressed, angry, overwhelmed, and sat in my woes and just kind of just stayed in my old job and been in an unhappy relationship and just been a microcosm of what I was. But instead I was like, you know what? This is a hard thing to deal with. I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. However, I'm going to give life the best shot I have, the best shot of discovering who I am. What is my why? And why is my why my why? I find that as a cancer survivor and somebody who works in the breast cancer space, I think about cancer all day long. I have friends who are going through breast cancer who are early stagers, patients who are metastatic, some who are, in hospice, and some who are literally right now in transition. Um, but what I find most powerful is those who know that even though their body does have cancer, they're not the cancer, that they're still living their life. One of my dear friends, Nani Reese, Nani is one of the most amazing people I know. She is such a heart-based, faith-based, expressive person, and she's fighting for her life right now. But she talks about not fighting for her life, but about healing, and healing in the way that God wants for her. And so I think that there's so much space for that in our lives. And also, as you navigate the breast cancer journey, for me, I found that I've gotten more spiritual healing than anything else. That the person I am is not who I was before, and that's what I want for all my sisters. Patricia Fox is on now, and Patricia talked about, before we had a pre-interview, about how beauty is not skin deep, which ties into your work, Bruce, and how she transformed inside out. So Patricia's work really about beauty, and how embracing her whole self has really helped her change her life. More on that, Patricia?
So the biggest thing was honestly, like, I think once my hair started falling out, which they advised, and I think almost everyone that I talked to, they're like, well, maybe I'll be the exception. And that's how I felt when I was diagnosed. I cut my hair low, but my hair still felt like slipped out from my scalp. And I think that being what we call blank, meaning having no brows, no lashes, no hair, no nothing, no distraction, nothing to do, that's when I was like, oh my God, I'm beautiful, because I was able to see like my strength. The fact that even if I didn't feel good or I felt like quitting, I didn't quit. And like with meditation, knowing like, okay, this is temporary. This is not going to last forever. But I was able to see like just a version of myself that even still to this day, it feels like almost intangible unless I am really facing something I feel like I can't overcome. And then I see her. And yeah, like just looking in my eyes, seeing my bravery, seeing that glow from within, that desire to live. Because like you mentioned before about mental health, prior to cancer, 2 months prior, I tried to take my own life. I was so upset. I was so depressed. I felt like my life was mundane and gray, and I was not happy with my career. I was not happy with how my relationships were going. And so afterward, going through this journey and appreciating life and fighting for my life and seeing that warrior inside of me, a warrior doesn't mean strong in the sense of fighting. It could be strong in a sense of vulnerability, strong in a sense of like, I identify that I need to make boundaries. I need to honor myself. And it's those things, those actions that are beautiful to me and that just showed from the inside out. And that's what made me feel like, okay, I can go after what I want. I can now be the beauty influencer that I desire to be and make this impact with beauty in this community and for just so many other women. So yeah, that was like my transformational experience with cancer and beauty.
I love it. I love your blend of, making sure that you're beautiful on the inside out. And, I've gotten myself a lot more spiritual. I am of Christian faith, but I believe in all religions that have equal, space in people's lives as they choose to practice. But personally, in the morning, I get up, I say my prayers, I meditate, I do my tapping, EFT. I see my therapist once a week. I have sound bowls. I have my angel cards. I take baths. All those things. I want to come back to Tamika's in a minute, but I want to talk to Esther a bit about, because Esther and I talked about, my routine, and then I was saying I do a lot of self-care, which I do self-care. And she said, well, some of what you're doing is self-soothing, because I think when you're in the moment, you're self-soothing, but then there's things you do that as a ritual or practice in the morning, throughout the day, noticing your thoughts. Are you being mindful of your fear and how you manage that and all that? So Esther, I want you to share what you talk about with me a lot about self-care versus soothing, and why that's important to breast cancer patients and those who are caring for them as they navigate their breast cancer journey.
I love when you and I talk about this. I love talking about this in general because I think, and it's great. Self-care has become such a hot trend. It's something that we talk about so much publicly. But I think it's important for us to understand that self-care and self-soothing, and there's sort of layers to this. So self-care is really about creating a lifestyle. It's about creating daily, weekly, monthly habits that kind of help you to be intentional about taking care of yourself, right? So that may be, that you get up and meditate every morning. It may be, that you go work out 3 times a week. Maybe it's that you have a monthly massage, right? Like those are all self-care activities. The difference between self-care and self-soothing is about saying, in this acute moment, I'm having a panic attack. What do I need? I woke up this morning and I don't want to get out of bed. I'm feeling incredibly depressed. What do I need? Self-soothing is about acute care. It's about saying, in this exact moment, what is going to help me feel grounded, feel safe, feel capable of facing my day or whatever it is that's in front of me. So sometimes those activities look the same, right? Like it might be if you wake up feeling on the edge of a panic attack in the morning, self-soothing might be meditation for you, right? It might be some guided mindfulness meditation. Self-care might also be meditation, but it's meditation that you have scheduled into your life in a daily or weekly practice. It's what you do to sustain yourself over the long term. Self-soothing is really saying, in this moment, something is happening for me and I need to figure out how to take care of myself right this second. And so when those things come together, it really allows you to have kind of a baseline foundation of taking care of yourself. That's your self-care habits. And then you should really kind of cultivate it. I'm a big fan of making a list, keeping a little note, on the notes app on your phone, making a list there, having people on speed dial who are kind of your self-soothing partners, so that when you're in a moment of incredible stress or sadness or grief, you know kind of what those resources are. So you can pull on them at any time that you need them, be it the middle of the night, the middle of the day.
Yeah, thank you, Esther. That was beautiful and well said. Tamika, I'm going to call on you next. So you have been through, so many different challenges. Tell us about, how you live the simple life and how you find time to enjoy and how you create pockets of joy as you're navigating your healing process with the assault that you went through and as you're dealing with being a breast cancer patient.
What I do during my free time, I help out the senior citizens. I go to nursing homes. I take them to dialysis. I bring them groceries. I also model. I made the billboards. I made it in magazines. Like, I'm enjoying my life. Like, I don't want cancer to take over the things that I really love and that I really want to do in life as like my future, my dreams. So I basically just, because I experienced how things were before, like how bad I got, I know I don't ever want to go back there. So I have to do whatever I have to do to keep going so that I won't ever get back in that state of mind.
Beautiful. I'm so in awe of all of you and all that you do. I want to go around and ask you all for what is your one most favorite self-care tip for you, Tawana, as a nurse navigator? What is one of the most important self-care tips you give to your patients?
For me, my faith has grown so much in the last 10 plus years, and my alone time in the car that I have with God, that is my one thing that I try to do every day, is just to get in his word and just be with him. And then for my patients, what I recommend for them self-care wise, there are 2 things that I recommend. Sleep. I am a sleep pusher. Sleep is so important. And then the second thing is asking for help. We all have people who say they want to be there, they want to do this and do that. I tell them, put those people to work. That's the one thing that you can do, is take that burden of having to go to the grocery store or go do laundry or whatever, put them to work, and that will allow you time to go take that nap that you need, because as you guys all know, chemotherapy in itself is exhausting. There are many days that you're fatigued and you just don't have the energy to get up. So sleep and using somebody else are the 2 things that I recommend to the patients all the time.
Thank you. Tamika?
Laughing is just good for the soul. Like, it makes you I just like being happy because I'm a happy individual. I love to smile. So I do things to try to keep me happy. I make sure I surround myself around positive people. I don't want any bad energy, any bad company. So that's one of the tools. And also, like she just said, another thing I like to do is break generational curses. Like, if you need help, then you need to ask for help, because a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
That's right.
Wow, that was deep. Thank you. Deep to the point. Thank you so much. Thanks for those tips. Esther?
So I'm very big on breathing. You can Google things like breath work. Again, fourth square breathing is huge. So I think that's really helpful. Other things, if you are experiencing panic attacks or just sort of anxiety attacks, these periods of time that sort of show up unexpectedly, I'm big on carrying like a touchstone. So maybe it's a crystal, maybe it's a rock, maybe it's a shell, maybe it's, you know, a little like silk scarf that you put in your pocket. But grounding techniques typically are about helping us bring ourselves again back to the body. So using our physical senses. So something that you can touch that's in the present moment that brings a sense of soothing can be really helpful. If you happen to be home, run your hands under warm water, go take a hot shower, take a warm bath. Again, like helping you reconnect to your physical body actually helps you to feel more grounded, more centered, and soothes those anxious experiences when they come up.
I want to get to Bruce and then Patricia. Bruce, what is your mental health tip?
Breathing. You know, this is Breathe TV, right? But it is that realizing that it's what I said at the very beginning, that in this moment, in this breath, I have everything I need. And so while there are all these demands, right? You know, there's the thoughts about a future cancer treatment, or the remembering of the pain of a loss or another cancer. There's this idea that, you know, the person I was before cancer, I'll never be that person again. All of those are stories that are based on a time that doesn't exist, right? Yesterday doesn't exist anymore. Tomorrow doesn't exist. In fact, 2 minutes from now or 2 minutes ago don't exist, other than they are they're a fantasy, an imagined what is going to be, or a memory of what was. And so all of my anxiety, all of my fears, all of my regrets, all of my worries are somewhere other than right now in this breath. And so when I find my mind consumed with thoughts about, well, you know, what is tomorrow going to bring, or how am I going to solve that problem? I've discovered that I can solve that problem so much more peacefully, so much more creatively, if I'll just stop that stream of thought and just take a few minutes to just breathe and to listen to this heartbeat, and to realize I'm alive. I'm alive for a reason. And in this moment, there are no problems in this one breath. There's just right now. And I will know exactly how to solve that problem when that future day becomes now. But right now, I'm good. Right now, I'm alive. Right now, I'm grateful. And that's my number one way to just really bring it all back to what's real, right? So much of what we think about, so much we talk about isn't real. It's either what did happen or what we think might happen. But what's real is right now. So that's my number one tip. Just breathe.
You said so many things that were so wise, Bruce, and I just adore you for all those reasons, so many reasons. Esther, for those who are watching who are maybe experiencing anxiety or panic attacks or any kind of stressors, are there some tips you can give people who are listening and are watching, in terms of like 2 or 3 tips they can use when they're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, or a scanxiety going into a scan?
Absolutely. And I think that's first of all, your description is, I think, perfect. I think I hear a lot of people talk about when they think about the difference between anxiety and panic attacks. And, you know, obviously as a therapist, I'm like, it's not that one is better or worse than the other, but the experience of them are very different. Anxiety can be something that feels pervasive through the course of your day, your weeks. And while very, very distressing, oftentimes people feel like, okay, I can do certain things, or I can pretend like I'm okay. Where panic attacks typically are, they kind of surprise you. And so it feels like emergency. I can't breathe. I'm going to die. Like those are very common sort of thoughts that people have during a panic attack. So the first, if you take no other tip, follow your breath, right? Like Our breath is something that is with us all the time, and it really actually is one of our most powerful kind of self-soothing and self-care tips. And so it's one of the things that I think is one of the reasons that meditation is really helpful, right? We tune into our breath, and our breath helps us both ground ourselves like psychologically. So part of what happens is your thoughts are spiraling and you have this negative narrative. But if you start to focus on your breathing, you can't keep thinking about all of those negative thoughts. And so it helps you in sort of your mind, but also when you pay attention to your breath and you follow your breath and do things like, a deep breath in through your nose and then slowly out through your mouth. Forward square breathing is another great technique. Breathe in for 4, for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, rest, and do that 4 more times, 4 times altogether. It also helps you physiologically, and particularly with anxiety and panic attacks. Part of what happens is your body is having these biological reactions. Your heart starts racing, your palms are sweating, you feel the experience in your body, not just that you're having these thoughts. And so having a tool that brings you back home to your body reminds you that you actually have some sense of control over your body, which I think is in particular when we're dealing with something like cancer, is an experience we need to have more regularly, is being connected back to our bodies, because so much is happening with our body that can often feel disconnecting.
Beautiful. Patricia.
For me, it's prayer and meditation. I I absolutely have to pray and meditate or read something that's inspiring, but prayer and meditation is like the biggest key to my beauty routine. If I don't feel good inside, I don't care how much makeup I apply, I don't care how I style my hair, I'm not going to feel it unless I truly feel grounded and I feel just like inspired, full of gratitude, knowing that everything that is and that was and that's to come, it's going to be okay no matter what. And if I'm not grounded in that, nothing else matters. So that's like my top beauty secret. That's for me, that's how I do it.
You are simply amazing. I want to thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Tamika, Tawana, Bruce, Esther, for an amazing session. For those who are watching, this is May McCarmo. I am your host of Breathe TV. Breathe TV is your place to come to learn about breast cancer, treatments, options, survivorship, and just living in this human body and this life in this space. We hope that in this moment that you were with us, that you took the time to breathe, to know that you are loved and that you're living in the now and to enjoy the moment. So have a blessed day, and until next time, take a deep breath and just breathe. Thank you. Brought to you in partnership with Puma Biotechnology.